The shadows of Point Pleasant have a way of stretching long, even when the sun is at its zenith. It is a town defined by the convergence of the Ohio River and a history that refuses to be buried. We often think of monsters as products of folklore or the fever dreams of the isolated. But there is a specific kind of terror that transcends the campfire story. It is the terror of the witness, the individual whose reality is shattered by a single inexplicable encounter. Between November 1966 and December 1965, something arrived in West Virginia that defied the biological constraints of our world. It was a creature of impossible dimensions, a harbinger of kinetic dread, and it left a trail of psychological wreckage that remains fresh to this day. Every witness who saw the Mothman, regardless of their background, their education, or their skepticism, reported the same chilling detail before the entity vanished into the ether. It was not just the red eyes, glowing like hot coals in the dark, nor the massive moth-like wings that seemed to vibrate with a frequency that made the air itself feel heavy. It was a singular, terrifying moment of communication that turned a simple sighting into a lifelong haunting. They all described a feeling of absolute paralyzing recognition, a sensation that the creature was not merely observing them, but was reading the architecture of their very souls. As we delve into the anatomy of these sightings, we must look beyond the physical description. The physical is secondary to the psychological impact. When the witnesses stood before the Mothman, the world around them seemed to mute. The crickets stopped their chorus, the wind died down, and the ambient noise of the Appalachian night was replaced by a suffocating, unnatural silence. It was in this silence that the witnesses felt the entity's gaze. They said that before it disappeared, it didn't just fly away. It seemed to fold itself into the darkness, as if the space it occupied was no longer compatible with the physical laws of our reality. The consistency of these reports is what makes the Mothman legend so uniquely disturbing. We are not talking about a disparate group of people seeing different things. We are talking about a collective experience of a singular, recurring phenomenon. Imagine driving down a desolate stretch of Route 62, the headlights cutting through the fog, and suddenly standing before you is a figure that stands 7 feet tall. Its wings are folded behind it, yet they seem to span the width of the road. You hit the brakes, the tires skid on the asphalt, and for a few seconds you are locked in a staring contest with something that should not exist. You look into those eyes, and you don't see an animal. You see a reflection of your own mortality. This is the common thread. Every witness reported that as the creature turned to depart, it made a sound that wasn't quite a screech and wasn't quite a mechanical hum. It was a vibration that resonated in their teeth, in their chest, in the marrow of their bones. They all reported that the creature looked directly at them with an intelligence that felt ancient and utterly indifferent to their fear. Then, with a sudden, impossible burst of speed, it would ascend vertically, vanishing into the night sky like a stone dropped into an infinite well. The witnesses were left standing in the cold, forever changed, carrying the weight of a secret that the rest of the world would refuse to believe. The Mothman was not just a visitor, it was a catalyst. The sightings coincided with a series of tragic events that would eventually culminate in the collapse of the Silver Bridge, a disaster that claimed 46 lives. This connection has led many to wonder if the creature was a harbinger of doom, a biological manifestation of coming tragedy, or perhaps a sentinel from a dimension that exists parallel to our own. When we analyze the testimonies, we find that the witnesses were often ordinary people, factory workers, local law enforcement, housewives, who had no interest in the occult. They were practical people. They had no reason to fabricate such a harrowing story, and they had every reason to stay silent to avoid the ridicule of their neighbors. Yet they spoke. They spoke because the silence of the aftermath was louder than their fear of social ostracization. They needed to articulate the impossible. They needed to describe that specific, chilling moment when the Mothman would look at them, tilt its head as if trying to understand the human condition, and then dissolve into the gloom. Some researchers have suggested that the Mothman is a form of cryptid, an undiscovered species that has managed to evade the prying eyes of modern science through camouflage or nocturnal habits. But this theory fails to account for the intensity of the encounter. A bear or a mountain lion does not leave a human with the feeling of having been spiritually scrutinized. There is a depth to the Mothman reports that suggests something far more complex, something that borders on the paranormal or the interdimensional. The witnesses felt as if they were being evaluated. They felt as if the creature was measuring the duration of their shock, waiting for the exact moment when their fear peaked before it chose to vanish. This implies a level of consciousness that is alien to our understanding of the animal kingdom. The Mothman did not attack. It did not hunt in the conventional sense. It simply appeared, occupied the space, and then departed, leaving behind a vacuum of understanding that researchers have been trying to fill for over half a century. If we look at the history of folklore, we see patterns of similar entities appearing before great catastrophes. The banshee, the black dog, the harbinger of the abyss, every culture has its version of an entity that arrives when the fabric of reality is about to tear. The Mothman is the American iteration of this ancient archetype, updated for the industrial age, appearing in the shadow of chemical plants and steel bridges. The witnesses describe the creature's movement as fluid, almost liquid, as if it were swimming through the air rather than flying. This fluidity is a key detail. It suggests that the creature is not bound by the friction of our atmosphere. When it disappeared, it didn't just fly away. It seemed to merge with the shadows, as if the darkness itself were a curtain it could pull closed behind it. This is the point where the witnesses would often break down during interviews. It wasn't the sight of the creature that haunted them. It was the realization that the world they thought they understood was porous. They realized that there were entities living in the margins, watching, waiting, and occasionally stepping into the light to remind us that we are not the masters of this domain. The psychological toll on the witnesses was profound. Many developed a lingering sense of hypervigilance, an inability to be in the dark, and a persistent feeling that they were being watched, even years after the sighting stopped. They had been touched by something that did not belong, and the residue of that touch never truly faded. The scientific community predictably dismissed these reports as mass hysteria, misidentified owls, or the result of environmental toxins. But how do you explain the uniformity of the experiences? How do you explain the fact that people who had never met, living in different parts of the county, all reported the same feeling of being read by the creature? How do you explain the way the creature seemed to know exactly when to vanish, as if it were timing its departure to maximize the psychological impact? These are not questions that can be answered by biology. They are questions that require us to look at the intersection of consciousness and the environment. Maybe the Mothman isn't a creature at all. Maybe it is a lens through which we view our own fears. Or, perhaps more disturbingly, it is a genuine entity that exists on a frequency we are only capable of perceiving during moments of extreme stress or transition. The Silver Bridge collapse served as the final chapter of the Mothman sightings, or at least the most prominent one. The bridge fell, the lives were lost, and the creature seemingly retreated into the shadows of history. But the stories did not die. They were passed down, whispered in the back rooms of diners and in the quiet corners of homes along the Ohio River. They became part of the local identity, a dark badge of honor for a town that had seen the face of the unknown. As we analyze these accounts, we must ask ourselves what we would do if we were in their shoes. If you were driving home late at night and you saw those red eyes reflecting the glare of your headlights, would you try to rationalize it? Would you tell yourself it was a trick of the light, a stray animal, or a vivid hallucination? Or would you recognize in the depths of your gut that you were looking at something that shattered the boundaries of your world? The Mothman represents the ultimate unknown. It is the reminder that no matter how much we map the Earth and explain the stars, there are still corners of this planet that are wild, unpredictable, and profoundly dangerous. The witnesses of Point Pleasant were not looking for adventure. They were just living their lives, and yet they became the conduits for a mystery that continues to defy explanation. This is the nature of the dark. It is not just the absence of light, it is the presence of things that thrive where the light cannot reach. The Mothman is the personification of that darkness, a silent observer that reminds us that we are always at every moment being watched by the things we cannot comprehend. As we reach the end of this investigation, we are left with more questions than answers. Was the Mothman a guardian, warning the people of Point Pleasant of the tragedy to come? Was it a predator feeding on the collective fear of the community? Or was it simply a traveler passing through our dimension on its way to somewhere else, indifferent to the chaos it left in its wake? The witnesses never knew for sure. All they knew was the feeling of those eyes, the weight of that silence, and the sudden, jarring moment when the creature vanished into the air. They were the lucky ones, in a sense. They survived to tell their story, even if that story cost them their peace of mind. They are the keepers of a secret that the rest of us can only study from a distance. And as we study it, we must remember that the Mothman is not just a legend. It is a testament to the fragility of our reality. It is a warning that the world is much larger and much stranger than we are led to believe. The sightings may have ceased, but the mystery remains, hanging over the valley like a thick, impenetrable fog. Every time you see a shadow move in the corner of your eye or hear a strange vibration in the air that you cannot explain, you are touching the edge of the Mothman's domain. You are feeling the same ripple in the air that the witnesses felt, the same premonition that the world is about to change. We live in a time where everything is documented, where every mystery is supposedly solved by a quick search or a scientific study. But the Mothman defies this paradigm. It remains uncaptured, unclassified, and entirely terrifyingly free. It serves as a reminder that there are still mysteries worth fearing, and that sometimes the most important truths are the ones that can never be proven. So, as you go about your life, remember the witnesses of Point Pleasant. Remember the red eyes, the wings, and the silence. And consider for just a moment that you might be closer to the edge of the unknown than you think. The Mothman is waiting, not in the woods, but in the spaces between our thoughts, in the gaps of our understanding. And one day, perhaps, the veil will thin again, and another witness will find themselves standing on a lonely road, face to face with the impossible. Until then, we are left to piece together the fragments of their accounts, searching for a pattern in the chaos, hoping to understand the creature that saw us long before we ever saw it. The investigation into the Mothman is not just an investigation into a cryptid, it is an investigation into the human psyche and our desperate need to find meaning in the face of the unexplainable. We want to believe that there is a reason for the things that go bump in the night, that if we just look hard enough, we will find the logic behind the terror. But the Mothman offers no such comfort. It offers only the gaze, the silence, and the vanishing. It is the ultimate manifestation of the unknown, and it remains as potent today as it was in the winter of 1966. We have reached the end of our inquiry, but the story is far from over. The Mothman is not a creature of the past. It is a creature of the eternal present, waiting for the right conditions to reveal itself once more. And when it does, the witnesses will be there, ready to report the same chilling detail, the same sense of recognition, and the same impossible departure. The cycle continues, and we are merely the observers of a phenomenon that has no end. As we reflect on these stories, we have to acknowledge the bravery of those who stepped forward. They risked their reputations, their sanity, and their standing in the community to share what they saw. They did it because they felt a responsibility to the truth, even when that truth was incomprehensible. They are the unsung heroes of the paranormal, the ones who kept the flame of the mystery alive when everyone else wanted to extinguish it. Their stories deserve to be heard, not just for the thrill of the tale, but for the respect of their experience. They saw something that challenged the very foundations of their world, and they survived it. That is a testament to the strength of the human spirit in the face of the inexplicable. We have explored the history, the sightings, and the aftermath of the Mothman phenomenon. We have looked at the evidence, the theories, and the psychological impact. We have walked the path of the witnesses and stood in the silence they described. And now the question remains, what do you believe? Do you think the Mothman was a physical entity, a projection of the subconscious, or something else entirely? Do you believe that we are alone in this world, or do you think there are things watching us from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to emerge? The beauty of the mystery is that it belongs to everyone. It is a blank canvas upon which we can project our own fears, our own hopes, and our own understanding of the universe. The Mothman is a reflection of us, and in studying it, we are ultimately studying ourselves. We have reached the final moments of this investigation, but the door is left open for you to continue the search. The archives of the Mothman sightings are vast, and there are always new details to uncover, new witnesses to interview, and new perspectives to consider. The mystery is a living thing, growing and evolving with every person who takes an interest in it. It is a story that refuses to be contained, and that is why it remains one of the most compelling enigmas of the modern era. As we conclude this dossier, take a moment to look into the darkness around you, listen to the silence, and ask yourself if you are truly alone. The Mothman might be gone, but the mystery of its presence, the weight of its gaze, and the haunting reality of its existence remain. The truth is out there, hidden in the fog, waiting for the next witness to step into the light. And when they do, you can be sure that they will say the same thing. They will feel the same fear, and they will be changed in the same way. The legacy of the Mothman is not the creature itself. It is the impact it had on the people who saw it. It is the way it forced them to confront the limitations of their own knowledge and the vastness of the unknown. It is a reminder that we are small, that we are fragile, and that we are part of a world that is far more mysterious than we dare to admit. We have examined the evidence, analyzed the reports, and listened to the voices of the past. Now, the rest is up to you.